Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, the Tri-County Metro, currently the 15th hottest job market in the country. We also had Orlando and Kissimmee checking in with the 8th hottest in the country right now. So obviously our state, and specifically South Florida, about as good as it gets. And so that means you got a lot of employers that are trying to fill a lot of opportunities. And, well, in those interviews, an interesting thing that could be happening. What's called the Pinocchio Effect. Latest research shows, get this, nearly 8 in 10 lie during the hiring process to a prospective employer. Mark Fenner, business strategist. You may follow him at MarketRisePG on Twitter. Mark, well, what do you think of this? We got 78% of job seekers lying to their prospective employers?
Yeah, it's an amazing statistic, isn't it? That, when people are searching for a job, they often view themselves as fighting for their survival, even in this record low unemployment era that we're in. And they've rationalized telling white lies, and it's led to this. I mean, clearly 8 in 10, that's an unbelievable number, isn't it, that have admitted to lying during the hiring process.
Here's my question. How many employers pick up on this dishonesty?
Not enough. Not enough, Brian. I mean, very few have a systematic approach to interviewing that weeds out inconsistencies in the stories. And the discipline to hiring right can help companies, fill their employee ranks with the kind of employees that they want on their teams that can perform. But most managers don't know how to do it. They look for people that, they want the job filled so quickly. They take whoever shows up, and they don't put the proper discipline into this process.
I was thinking about that recently. My dad used to say, my business, my background outside of radio is business. And when I was learning from him when I was young, he was an executive within a Fortune 500 company. And he would talk about full employment back when we used to say it was 5%. And this would be in the mid-90s. And he said, it's hard to think for a moment, out of just 100 people on the street, that 95 of them are working. Those 5 people that aren't, typically there's a reason. It's because they're probably flawed. Either they don't want to do the work, or they aren't willing to obtain the skills that are necessary for the opportunities. But then you also have to think about dishonesty. If we've got 80% of people essentially who are dishonest to begin with, I mean, how can you make good informed decisions as an employer in a labor market like this one, where unemployment in South Florida, the unemployment rate's only 3% right now?
Yeah, it's really difficult. First of all, companies have got to find a way to find people that are already working, right? Because if they're not working, there's probably a problem with that individual in this unemployment market. But then they've got to do we teach a hiring process that does a job histories review over the last 15 years, and it's detailed and it's stringent, but you know what? It weeds out inconsistencies and it yields results. And that's what companies have got to have, that discipline to especially on important hires, to go through the process and give themselves the highest probability of making a good hire.
Now, Mark, obviously dishonesty is not ideal regardless. And it's ultimately going to be an excuse if somebody is saying, you know what, but I really want the job. I don't mean to be a bad person, but I just really want to say the right thing, even if I'm stretching the truth. What would your guidance be to them so that someone who is genuinely a good person, means well, but might feel inclined to lie, why shouldn't they in an interview setting?
Well, I think that first of all, your character is something that you wear as an individual, right? It's not situational. And I think that, a lot of the lying that they're talking about, there's shades, right? Do I shade a little bit and position what my responsibilities were is maybe one type of lie, right? Another type is saying, I've got a 4-year degree from Harvard when I only took an online class there. I mean, that's a blatant lie, sure, in my opinion. And, I think, again, it's record low unemployment. The power has shifted to the potential employee. Own who you are. I mean, companies are they're valuing more and more transparency and authenticity. So don't feel the pressure to embellish. You're just setting yourself up for a treadmill of always trying to make up for, the overselling that you're doing in yourself, and just trust your skills and trust that you can add value to your employer and own it.
Mark, it's a little bit of a divergence, but given that you are a business guru generally, taking a look at what we have going on, the coronavirus, we are seeing now, after a positive start to the day, Dow is down over 1% again, down over 300 points. And now we're talking about closing in on 1,500, going back to the sell-off since Friday. Do you think that there is a systemic, longer-term negative impact in the U.S. economy to what's going on with the coronavirus?
Well, I think that supply chains are going to be disrupted. And, it's yet to see the full extent of the disruption of those supply chains. But even though the U.S., knock on wood, and thank goodness, has not been impacted by other parts of the world are going to impact our supply chains. And so, I think we've got to be alert to this. I'm not willing to start panicking on what we're seeing so far, but I think we should be listening and paying attention and understanding as a business leader what parts of my supply chain could be impacted by this coronavirus.
Mark, I felt for a long time that we needed to wean ourselves off of Chinese cheap-made goods for any number of reasons for years. And there have been a number of politicians. One of the leaders has been our junior senator, former Governor Rick Scott, on this issue. Doesn't think we should buy any Chinese products. Obviously, it's been largely because it's been cheap to have them made over there. Do you think, we recently saw Apple open their first plant in Texas. Do you think more companies right now are taking a look at what's going on and are willing, especially in a better regulatory environment that we have under the Trump administration, to bring manufacturing back home to the United States?
Absolutely. My clients that are manufacturing centrics are seeing that work coming back into the States, and it's exciting to see. And I think the coronavirus is just one of many reasons to start to take a harder look at how can we do this work locally and keep the work local. And one, it's great for our economy, obviously, and we're employing U.S. citizens, but the risk of going overseas are starting to raise high enough that trade-off isn't as clear as it maybe was perceived to have been in the past.
Great information. Thank you very much, Mark. It's appreciated.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Good luck.
Mark Fenner, business strategist.